Good morning and welcome everyone to Spirit Matters, our daily Bhakti Center podcast where we talk about spiritual subject matters and we bring them into our daily life and learn how to apply them practically into our lived realities. I am here with co-host Achyuta Gopi and tri-host Dayal Garanga, and our live studio audience joining us from all over the states, all over the world. Thank you all for being here. How are you both doing this morning?
I'm good. No complaints.
I'm here, no complaints.
No complaints. No complaints.
None.
That's a great place to be. No
None that
complaints.
I feel comfortable sharing with you.
Oh, yesterday you brought up this word. Yeah, we were talking about spiritual boxes and what it looks like to be spiritual, or what's a spiritual response versus a material response. Martha really led us into this really awesome subject matter. um Now Martha's saying no complaints, lots of judgments, and this is actually the word we want to talk about today, because you brought this up, Dayal, yesterday, as well as your takeaway, trying not to make judgments or trying not to judge other people, because when we look at other people and we're thinking like, yeah, this what they're doing is spiritual or it's not, what's actually happening is a judgment, right? Like I'm judging whether or not they're spiritual enough or not spiritual enough. And yeah, I wanted to talk about that today, about judgment, our propensity to judge, why we judge, experiences with judging, how we judge ourselves. So take it away.
I put up a post a long time ago once, and it was saying that you could do all the spiritual things in the world, but God's not happy if you're still a jerk. And somebody wrote me, and they were saying, they're like, I usually vibe with your posts and the way that you present, bhakti yoga, but this just doesn't work well with me. This type of judgmental God and all of these things, and we're not supposed to be judging and all this stuff. And I said, I actually never said I'm not supposed to be judging. I'm gonna judge you all day. I From the time I wake up in the morning to the time I go to sleep, I'm judging something. This is what all of our sacred texts are saying. The mind is always accepting and rejecting things. The mind is making those distinctions and judging. It's up to us now to really see how that fits into our lives. And what I said was, I was like, well, Krishna not being happy with something doesn't mean that it's a condemnation of who you are and your eternal soul. But it doesn't mean that Krishna's always happy with everything that we do and the way we treat each other. And so both can be true at the same time. It depends on how you're taking it. Oh my God, God's not happy now. I'm condemned. And I'm like, I didn't say any of that. All I said was the heart of God is not happy if you're treating other people like a jerk, which is truth. Now, can he forgive you past that and still make room for you and accept you? Also truth.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the idea of being happy or not with something, and that immediately turning towards condemnation. Like it shows up in relationships often, even it's like our personal relationships. Like someone's not happy with you, and you think that, okay, like that everything, we can't be friends anymore. I don't love you anymore, and it's okay to not be happy with somebody's actions, and still not withhold love from them. I was at a wedding over the weekend, in California, that you may know, and um, whenever I'm in these kind of celebrations, whether it be a wedding or something else, my mind is always in two places. And well, I'll first I'll add the fact that afterwards, because Radhanath Swami was at the wedding, and afterwards Radhanath Swami met with just a few people from the Laguna Beach Sangha, because that's where the wedding was. And I used to live in Laguna Beach. It's where I'm from devotionally. That's why I got invited to the wedding. The father of the bride invited me in, and I met the president there, and he pulled me in and invited me to this little sangha with Radha Swami. He was just speaking to to the a few, just it was an ad hoc kind of just meeting with some of the devotees there, and he was asking questions, and then I was waiting for everyone else to ask their questions. Then I asked a question that I thought might also be on everyone else's mind sometimes. And this was my question. Um, so the answer that I'll give was what he shared. Um, but the question was that whenever I'm in a celebration like this, my mind kind of goes to two places. One is I think of the people that are tremendously inspired by the event that's taking place and feeling encouraged and feeling uplifted and feeling like this is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I want to renew my own commitments, whether it be a wedding or some other celebration of someone's forward movement in spiritual life. And my mind in other places is always thinking of people who actually may feel a sense of isolation or a sense of shame or a sense of being less than for struggling to live up to or withhold the same principles that are being celebrated there, like people who have gotten a divorce or people who are not married, etc. And there was even a letter that was written by Srila Prabhupada that mentioned, um, in a Krishna conscious marriage, like divorce is not an option. Like somebody, Giriraj Swami read that letter. But then it was a really beautiful letter about the sacredness of marriage and etc. And so when I read that, I mean, I knew and had friends in the audience that are devotees that were divorced, that I know that, and maybe found another relationship that's working well now, or maybe not. And so I just asked the question, is like, how do we, because one of the themes of that Sangha was like, no matter how much we struggle or stumble, etc., there's always a place for us, and we're always accepted by Krishna, and we're always loved. So my question was, how do we, in a spiritual society of, relatively very high moral standards and values, at the same time, you know, make people feel that there's a place for everyone, but at the same time without this isolation, etc. So that was my question. And then his answer was very related to kind of what you were sharing, Achyuta Gopi, where he said that, well, first of all, he said that in order to have a very mature understanding of what Srila Prabhupada wrote or spoke, we have to also have a mature understanding of how he lived. And he said that, there are principles in life, and that Srila Prabhupada spoke pure principles, and that he never budged from those principles. And at the same time, he never withheld his love from anybody. And he never withheld an opportunity for anybody to achieve perfection in life. And so this idea of, if you water down standards or principles over time, it just becomes kind of lost, and it's just like anybody can do anything, and it doesn't matter how you live your life, and it doesn't matter anything, and there's spirituality itself loses all meaning. Love, like relationships, loses all meaning. The idea of whether it be marriage or spiritual sadhana and practice or living in spiritual community, like nothing means anything anymore, because you can just do whatever, and it doesn't matter. But there are standards, there are principles of how we're meant to live life, how we're meant to behave, and we should uphold that. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that love is ever withheld, just because something is not adhered to. Anyways, I can speak and elaborate more, but I was already talking a lot. But I really, really appreciated that, because I think it very much aligns with what you were mentioning about, yeah, we're allowed to feel sad at somebody's actions. We're allowed to be disappointed even. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that we're not accepted, we're not loved, and we're not invited in.
That's why that Radhanath Swami is my guy. I
Mhm.
and funny enough, when you were speaking, I was kind of like thinking in my mind, like, what is Maharaja's usual answer to a question like that? And that really is, he really brings in the distinction between principles and details.
Mm.
And you have principles that you want to really set as standards, and then you understand that the details are going to have to be tweaked and shifted and molded. And Srila Prabhupada was so much about that. And people, I feel, will often weaponize quotes and things said outside of the context of both the entirety of whatever speech he was having or walk conversation, and without the context of life. And so someone asked me recently, and they said their wife had kind of lost faith in the institution.
Mm.
How would I suggest they help them get it back? I said, well, do you have Yamuna Devi's book? And Yamuna Devi was
Mm.
a very wonderful senior bhakti yogi at the beginnings, very beginnings of this ISKCON movement. He said, yeah. I said, I suggest you read it with her. Don't just tell her to read it with her.
Mhm.
Have the entire experience together. I said, but there will be so many amazing things within those books where you'll see the context of how Srila Prabhupada treated people.
Mm.
Just besides being a teacher, there are some didactic things that occur and things that teachers have to speak. Like if you go into a calculus class, the teacher's going to teach calculus. And if you hate calculus, you don't hate the teacher. You just don't like calculus. But then when you understand how the teacher is willing to work with you, give you extra credit, whatever the case is, on a personal level, in order to boost your grade, you might be terrible at calculus, but able to pass the class. And that's what I feel like Srila Prabhupada was doing. He's looking at all of these higher principles and understanding this is the standard. And about 2% of people are going to be at that standard. He
Mm.
already knew that, completely understanding it. And then the details of everyone's specific life was very different. And he was able to adjust that, like you said, with such spiritual maturity and emotional maturity.
Mm.
It's interesting because I'm hearing everything that you both are saying, and I'm really thinking about the propensity that we have. Like, Achyuta, you were talking about this at the beginning, that the mind is going to accept and reject. And in these situations, weddings or spiritual, initiations or like whatever, there's a plethora of emotions going on from various different people. And it's interesting because it's like it's like there are gradations, right? Like,
Mm.
because discernment is very different than judgment, right? And me discerning what is good for me or what is bad for me in this moment, or discerning, yeah, this is something that I'm going to let in and it's going to nourish me, or actually, you know what, like this is something that I need to have some space from right now, is fine. I think when it starts going to judgment, it gets really like it starts to turn the that energy or that critical lens almost like it's almost like I start to take myself out of the picture of like how I'm relating to this, and it's more of like others, and this really imposing kind of opinion on others. And then the step up from judgment seems to be criticism, where I'm actually like, just there's malintent involved, and there's like, y'all are just fools, and so it's like this these stepping stones to a place where we really don't want to be, right? Because when we're criticizing others and when we're defaming others with our mind and with our words, it's really, really bad, energetically in so many ways. But I think that what was coming up for me, because, and it really hit home for me when Dayal brought this point up about like weddings and divorce and relationships. It's like, I think it's really important to ask ourselves, like, where is that propensity for judgment coming from? Or where is that propensity for criticizing coming from? And what it seems like, because I can't remember, someone said love. I can't remember who said love. But it seems like, we all just we're all just looking for that. We just want love and acceptance, right? We want that like love and acceptance that Srila Prabhupada so freely gave, even though the principle is here, that's fine. But when real life circumstances are happening, there's love and acceptance, because that judgment seems to, or that criticism seems to come from a place of like not feeling enough, or not feeling like I deserve that love, and therefore, why are you like this? Or you're doing like this? Or who are you to be like this? Or like, why are they getting married, but I'm, over here like this? And it's interesting on both ends, because one, I think if we are seeing others be judgmental or be critical, we can also fall into that trap of like, well, they're critical and criticizing, so now I'm going to criticize them for being critical, and then I'm kind of like sucked into the whirlpool of like negative energy. So on one end, I can see that happening and be like, yeah, just looking for love, it's fine. I'm also like this. I've also had these moments, and have a moment of compassion, which will lead to a better place. And then if I am the one judging or criticizing, which we've all been in that situation, um, yeah, perhaps having a moment to take a breather or taking a pause to be like, wait a minute, like, where is this coming from? Like, do I actually, like, think this, or am I just like hurting? Am I just alone? Do I just need a hug? Or do I actually think, because you can get into rabbit holes of like, and this person and this, it can go on for a while. I'm speaking from personal experience. Dayal says, I need a hug. Me too. Achuta says, me too.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as you were speaking, and I was thinking about judgment as a reaction to our own like shame and guilt in a situation. It starts to stem from this reactionary place where you can be in a situation, and I've been even at weddings and different places as a non-relationship separated person, and looking at it, and I felt that like awkward tug of war. And then I thought to myself, I was like, why do I feel awkward? I actually came to a place where I was like proud of myself for doing the things that I did, or moving out of the situations in life that just weren't great for me. And so I had to really sit there and confront that feeling before my mind got to attach it to it. Like, well, everybody says that like marriage is the way. And now what are you after now not being married and separated? And I was like, well, I'm me. And I actually feel really good about that. I actually like freed myself from a place that wasn't healthy for me. What does that mean for me? That actually is a celebration. Like, so along with these people, I could celebrate. And it doesn't have to mean that we're all celebrating the same things, but we actually are celebrating these principles of moving ourselves into healthier spaces and healthier relationships with everybody around us, which helped me stop making judgments about myself and other people, because it was stemming from this place of just feeling this shame and this guilt and what happens to me. And I felt that also when the person was saying, this judgmental God doesn't really work for me. And I was like, well, I didn't actually say God was doing anything with the sad feelings that he felt about us being jerks to each other. And so I think that's, we start to move into this reaction place. Well, if God, there must be some reaction. Well, what's going to happen then? Sometimes absolutely nothing. Sometimes all of the reaction and the hellish reaction happens here.
And and I also wanted to add, thank you so much for that, Achut. I appreciate it a lot, and Kishore also. Um, and there was one other thing that right now somebody mentioned that I thought was important. It was the idea of if we all recognize that I think there's a healthy sense of us all recognizing that there's growth that we all have to do, you know. And I think that sometimes, sometimes just offering a piece of feedback to somebody or mentioning something can trigger so much like shame and guilt that now I'm the worst person in the world. And it doesn't have to go to that extreme to think that there's something that I need to work on to get better. And our shortcomings or our quote unquote failings or our lack of ability to adhere to a certain standard of living, um, if we allow that, rather than to trigger tremendous shame and guilt and isolation and rejection, but rather in a healthy integrated sense allow that to simply foster a feeling of humility and a feeling, because the follow-up question that somebody asked, to my question was, sometimes I just feel so much like a failure and so like dejected, and it gets to a place where I just feel like it's hard for me to continue. And he said, like, you know Rana, so I mentioned, like, it's those moments where we can take the opportunity to either fall off a cliff and like fall into, whether it's a depression or a dejection or whatever, or we can allow our shortcomings to humble us and inspire us to take shelter. And taking shelter meaning not just like, okay, like I'm going to chant more japa and reach out to Krishna, but in other Vaishnavas and other devotees and other spiritual community, and realizing, allow that my sense of it, and we don't like this word a lot because it can be used in a very, very unhealthy sense, but in a healthy sense, our sense of dependency, you know our sense of I can't do it on my own, my sense of I need people to help lift me up. And when we get, like, there's a sense of, in spiritual life, of feeling like I could make it on my own is actually a very dangerous feeling. This sense of ultra self-reliance can actually be, is a very dangerous thing in spiritual life. And when we realize, like, wow, I actually need uplifting association, I actually need uplifting guides, I actually need people, and it causes us to seek that out. And so we can allow whatever, we can be humbled, and we can realize, okay, we can own our growth without a sense of shame, and we could allow ourselves to be humble to the place of wanting to reach out for guidance, and catch hold of that rope that links us back towards Krishna, towards where we want to be. And so I was kind of there was something I wrote a long time ago, that said the only difference between a lesson and a failure is my ego. you know and so the sense of dejection and shame is coming from the ego. The sense of learning and growing is coming from a place of reality. Dana wrote in the chants, I feel like sometimes those reactions are all about the feelings that it brings up inside of me that I don't like, or that I haven't taken the time to face or work through, or makes me look at things in myself that I have been hiding from. Yeah, exactly. We're seeing things about ourselves that we feel shame about, and rather than feeling shame, we can feel a sense of clearing out of the ego. And Dana also read, I was able to come to that humble place of needing people once I found the right people to be around. Yes, you got to be. Sometimes we take shelter of the wrong people, and that just makes it worse.
That is very true. Sometimes we do take shelter of the wrong people.
It's like, oops.
Oopsie. But it's also a learning experience. I think that sometimes that shame comes from, or that guilt that we feel comes from, like, the quote unquote mistakes that I made in the past. And it's really a understanding of, like, well, where did those mistakes take me? Like, did I learn from those mistakes, or am I making the same mistakes? Am I caught in a spiral of shame where I'm feeling ashamed of making the mistakes and therefore making even worse mistakes? Or have I actually grown from them? Has it brought me to a place where I'm taking shelter of the right people, or I am, doing things differently? And like this. But we are running fresh out of time. We are running fresh out of time. And therefore, we will go to our taker awayer, Kimberly. Please enlighten us with your takeaways.
Thank you for the great conversation. So today we're taking away to withhold principles without ever withholding love from each other. At the core, we're all just looking for acceptance and love. And then lastly, we can own our growth without feeling shame. We can allow ourselves to be humble to a place of searching for uplifting guidance and association.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. If anyone else has takeaways, please feel free to write them in the chat. Yes, uphold. Is that your takeaway, Dayal Duranga?
That's my takeaway.
Upholding principles without withholding love. Yes. It seems counterintuitive, but it's not. Upholding principles without withholding love. We need that on a shirt. We need to start a shirt idea list.
Shirt ideas. We're gonna our shirts are gonna be like a Dr. Bronner's soap bottle. There's gonna be like 1,000,001. It's gonna be one shirt. We didn't have funds to print all different shirts. We just printed one shirt with everything.
Ah,
The shirt should say in like big letters, "It behooves you to," and then the Dr. Bronner's, like the tiny little letters everywhere.
It behooves you.
Any takeaways?
I think my takeaway for today is to understand that I'm going to make mistakes without falling into the spiral of allowing myself to make worse mistakes and then feeling shame and guilt about it. Also, without going to the other extreme and saying, just so that I never make a mistake again, I'm just going to close up everything.
Mm. Mm. Can I share that takeaway with you, Achuta? I think I'm gonna share it with you because that's something that, yeah, that happens with me a lot. I'm just like, I'm never gonna make that mistake again. I'm gonna be perfect. Watch me, you know.
But also, yeah, and in my quest to be perfect, I'm just never gonna do anything like that ever, ever, ever again.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share that one with you because that's very me. And we're getting some Dana and Lane as well. They're like, yep, that's me. So yeah, just being open to the journey and like this. Awesome. Thank you both so much, Achuta and Dayal. Thank you to our live studio audience, Dana, for all of the really open and vulnerable shares. And thank you, Martha, for starting us off on this journey, talking about this wonderful topic. Thank you, everyone. Kimberly and Pasha, Sydney is here today. Irenka, Rachna was saying that she really needed to hear this conversation today. So thank you, Rachna, for being here. Rini, thank you all so much for tuning in. And we'll be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all. See you. Bye.